The darkness of the night was like an abyss. While Ashley Fisher was still befuddled by sleep, she felt her body being turned over forcefully by a pair of strong hands. Then, a lean and strong male body pressed on top of her. There were two cold fingers gripping her chin tightly. Ashley stirred in her sleep. She was awakened by the chill feeling on her chin. Subconsciously, she pushed the man on top of her away. The next moment, the strong smell of alcohol and a familiar breath made her space out. As expected, Scott was back, only when he was drunk and needed her that he would look for her in the guest room.
I'm your legal wife, not a woman whom you can pay to do whatever you want with. You disturb me every time I'm asleep. Couldn't you show some respect to me?
Being pinned down on the big bed, Ashley wriggled her body with all her might. She resisted fiercely, not willing to be kissed by him. His body reeked of alcohol. Who knew which woman he had kissed before he came back to kiss? During her 4-year marriage with Scott, Ashley was treated with cold violence. She thought that her body had long been trained to be invincible. However, Scott's drunken behavior that night still hit her weak spot precisely. The pain was so intense that she almost could not catch her breath.
Your husband hasn't come home late at night, and you don't even bother to call him. Oh, Ashley, do you still know that you're my wife?
Ashley had always been meek. Her sudden resistance ignited a fit of inexplicable anger within Scott, causing him to tighten his grip on her chin. It was as though he wanted to kill her. Ouch, it hurts. She squeezed her eyes shut. It really hurt. Trembling in pain, she opened her eyes and looked at Scott, whose eyes were as cold as ice. She bit her lips feebly, but she could not make a sound. After a while, Scott left the guest room. Again, there was silence in the room. Ashley felt as though her body was about to fall apart. Just as she was about to go to the bathroom to clean herself, Scott re-entered the room. He threw a box of medicine at her. Swallow them right away. He spoke in a casual tone, but each word was as brutal as a slap. Every time after they had sex, Ashley was forced to swallow pills in front of him. If she refused to take them, he would force them down her throat. Those pills were to prevent pregnancy. In Scott's heart, she was just a scheming woman who would stop at nothing just to marry him. Hence, he felt that she was unworthy of bearing his child. Facing his aggression, Ashley did not have the strength to resist anymore. She popped the pills into her mouth and swallowed them. A month and a half later, congrats, Mrs. Scott. You are 40 days pregnant. The fetus heartbeat is normal and it's developing well, the doctor told to Ashley in a gentle voice. Ashley bit her lips as the doctor handed her test result. Learning that she became a mother, she felt both joy and pain. It was an accident. Would her husband like their child? Would he hate her less because of their child? Squeezing her pregnancy test report tightly, Dorothy walked out of the consultation room with a calm expression. In the corridor, a handsome man with an indifferent expression walked toward her. His eyes were full of hostility. Scott's sudden appearance caught Ashley by surprise. Her chest tightened and she began to feel panicked. Nevertheless, she forced a smile and said,
Scott, why? Why are you in the hospital?
The man in front of Ashley was someone she had been deeply in love with for 10 years. She understood him more than anyone else. She would definitely not be so narcissistic as to believe that he had appeared in the hospital because he cared about her. However, at the thought of the child in her belly, Ashley was filled with courage. She quickened her pace and grabbed him by his arm, asking expectantly, Ashley, do you know it already? Did he know that she was pregnant? You mean, do I know that you are pregnant with another man's child? Credence's voice did not carry any warmth. Then, his palm clamped onto Ashley's thin arm like a pair of pincers. Ashley was caught off guard. She felt a dull pain radiating from the spot where her arm was grasped. The pain made her face turn as pale as a sheet. She let out a gasp, but the physical pain could not be compared to the pain she was feeling from Scott's brutal words. She staggered and struggled to stand firm. She clenched her fists on both sides of her body. There was a stubborn look on her face as she said in despair,
Scott, we have been married for 4 years. Even if you do not love me and treat me with emotional abuse, I have endured all of it. I can only blame myself for falling in love with you. But how could you make those comments about our child? Tell me again. What do you mean?
Scott's thin lips curled into a mocking smile. He threw the paternity test report in his hands at Ashley's face. His eyes were filled with bitter iciness.
The proof is right there. Stop acting innocent. Ashley Fisher, you really deserve to die.
Ashley's forehead was cut by the thin paper, leaving a striking red blood mark. It seemed that Scott really hated her to the core. She ignored the wound on her face. She picked up the paternity test report with trembling hands. When she saw the conclusion of the report, she was dumbstruck. The report showed that Scott was not the child's father. It was absurd. How was that possible? Besides Scott, she had not had sex with any other men. How could the child not be his? Ashley stared at the conclusion of the report in astonishment. Before she could recover from the shock, uttered cruelly, "Pack your things, we must get a divorce." The word divorce pierced Ashley's heart right to its core. There was a painful crushing sensation in the center of her chest. She was trying to convince herself that Scott was just joking. However, the lack of emotion in his eyes and the cold expression on his face repeatedly reminded her that he was serious. He was desperate to draw a clear line between them. There was no doubt that he was going to divorce her, and he did not wish to delay it any longer. "Baby, you have promised Dad. You promised him that you would take care of me for the rest of my life and that I would always be Mrs. Scott. Can we not get a divorce?" Her shoulders trembled and her voice was choked with emotion that it was almost inaudible. "I'll understand that you hate me, but do you also hate the child in my belly? Believe me, the child is yours." Her voice was full of despair and hopelessness. Scott looked as if he had just heard the most ridiculous joke ever. He let out a cold laugh and looked at Ashley indifferently.
I'll believe you if you get rid of the child.
No way. I must keep the child. Also, I don't want to get a divorce. This report must be wrong. Scott, this child is really yours. Please, trust me.
At that moment, there was no warmth. Scott's handsome face. He lit up a cigarette between his fingers, surrounded by the smoke. He stared at her coldly, his face full of ridicule.
Scott, you're my only man in my past 27 years. You're also the only man that I've been sleeping with. Can we do another paternity test?
Ashley took a few deep breaths and slowly calmed down. "If it turns out that you're really not the child's father, I'm willing to get a divorce."